it is important. Like, you might not be the best at it, but I think making a mindful effort to just make sure the people the people that you love know that you're there for them and you care for them and you love them and you're there for them. Like,
and sometimes it's not even the big things. It's honestly the little things. Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. So I think that I went through life just genuinely feeling like you are what you are. Mm-hmm. And some people are just better at some things, which is true. But I was thinking about my family, my mom, my dad, my sister, and they're all such like thoughtful people in the little ways. Like, if they know that I have a big day at work or an important meeting, like, they're texting me being like, we're praying for you, we love you. And they'll follow up. Like, my mom will text me and be like, how was today? How did it go? My sister will be like, hey, I remembered you said that you were going to do this. Like, how did it go? My dad will call me to check in. Like, that means so much to me. And I think for so many years, I went through life being like, oh, I just like didn't really get that gene. I'm just not like that. Not to say that I don't care. I feel like that, I guess, kind of came off the wrong way. I care so much. But in my mind, I was always like, well, I love being in person with people. I love being present. I feel like I'm pretty good at, like, when I'm talking to someone, I'm not on my phone. I'm not like thinking about other things. Like, I'm in the moment, I'm present. And I'm always like, well, when I see the person, I'm going to catch up with them. When I see the person, I'm going to ask how that important meeting was and how their day was and stuff. And I'm always like, that's like my version of caring. Like, that's what I do. When I see people, it's quality time. And I do think that's important. But the more that I've been thinking about it lately, I'm like, no, there is no excuse for not taking time out of your day to think about someone else, like what they're going through, and to reach out to them. Like, you're so good at that. I have friends who are so thoughtful, and they'll be like, hey, I remembered you telling me that you were like, stressed earlier this week. Like, how are you feeling now? And I'll see a text like that, and that'll mean so much to me. I'm like, wow, they really care. And I feel like that's something you're really good at. And I'm like, I want to be more like that.
I feel like you don't give yourself enough credit, though, because you texted me on Father's Day and you were like, I'm thinking of you. Like,
yeah.
So you're not, I mean, there's always room for improvement. But like, I think what you said, though, about like, you have to make the time. And I feel like we all are guilty of getting so caught up in our every day-to-day lives that like, we're just trying to get through the day. Like, it might not be at the forefront of our mind, but it's on our mind.
Yeah.
It might not be the first thing, but it's there. Yeah. But it takes 2 seconds to just check in with your friends and just shoot a text, be like, hey, how are you?
That's so true. And I think that it's something where I think it does come probably more natural to some people than it does to others.
Yeah.
I think of like my friend Caitlin, and she is so good at it.
She's so good at it.
She's so good at it. Like, she wakes up and she's instantly thinking about other people and like, who can I reach out to? Who had something going on today? Like, she's so good at it. And I've always admired her for that. But then I'm like, well, that's just not me.
Right.
And I'm like, it's almost like people are like, oh, Shannon's forgetful. Shannon, like, doesn't text fast. Like, and it's almost like a joke. And part of me is like, oh, that's like part of my charm. Ha ha ha. Like, but I'm good in person. And it's like, no. Maybe it doesn't come naturally to me, but it's like a muscle. Like, you train it and you get better. And I think lately what I'm trying to do is like spend time in the moment to think like, okay, who in my life like needs to hear from me this week? Like, who is going through something? Like, who can I reach out to and like try to brighten their day? Who can I just text and say, hey, I don't know if you know this, but like, when you did X, Y, and Z for me last week, like that meant a lot. Because I think a lot of times I assume this person knows how I feel about them. Like, even with you, I'm like, oh, Abby knows how much I love her. Michael knows how much I love her. Like, my family, they know how much I love them. Like, I love them so much. They know that. But like, what if they don't? Like, what if there are people in your life that don't know how much you care? Yeah. And maybe their love language is words of affirmation. And maybe like you not reaching out, they just don't know how much you care. And then I even think of like, I don't know if you've ever got like this, but do you have people in your life that shaped your life in such a major way, and maybe it's someone you haven't even talked to in years, but you're like, wow, that person like did something for me, and they probably don't even know.
Yeah, I could definitely think of a few people.
I think
I definitely don't know if they know.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thought. Like, I always think like there are definitely people out there that, I don't know. Like, there are people out there that I'm sure you've had an impact on and you don't even know.
But that's so weird because that's hard for me to believe.
No way.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, like maybe like my boyfriend, yeah, but like other than that, like other than someone that I'm romantically involved with, I'm like, nah.
You've had an impact on my life.
It's not that deep.
Yes, it is.
See, that's my mindset, but I'm like, whatever. Like,
what do you mean? Like, literally, we met each other, and during the pandemic, which was one of the hardest moments of my life, we became really close, and then we empowered each other, and we started this podcast, and we got through all this crazy ass trauma. And I know we always joke about like, oh, we were so fun back then and crazy, but like we grew up together. That's huge. That's so important.
I feel like it's also, it like can be hard because you don't want to like come off like I feel like there are some friendships or like just some people in your life where it's like you don't say I love you or you're not affectionate, and it would be weird for you to be affectionate, so you just aren't.
That's a good point.
And it's like hard to break that first barrier.
Like how do you make the
like
first
unless
move?
From like day one of your friendship, like how do you make a move on your friend? Like how do I make this not weird but also let them know I freaking love you, bitch?
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things where I'm like, oh.
Yeah. But like I think it's the little things. Like you said the Father's Day thing. I think all I texted you was like thinking of you today.
Yeah.
But I feel like you knew. Like you knew what that meant.
Yeah.
And like you've done so many things like that for me. I don't know. I was just thinking about this because, again, not to get like morbid, but so I had this teacher in high school, Mr. Usinger, and he was my math teacher. And I don't know. I think about that year with like such fondness because like all of our friends, we loved Mr. Usinger. He was like such a jokester and he'd always give us a hard time, but like he was one of those teachers who like he really cared.
Yeah.
Like he'd always joke around and be like, oh, like you're a shithead, like whatever. But like deep down, like he really cared. Like he'd spend the extra time after school or during like, study hall. We'd all be huddled around Mr. Usinger and we'd cracking jokes, but also trying to understand these like equations and geometry and all this shit. And this sounds so weird, but I think I really struggled with feeling like I was going to amount to anything for such a long time in my life. And my parents always were really, really supportive of me, but I always felt like in my head, I just thought I was really stupid. Like I thought I was like a dumb person. I was like, ugh, like I'm not good at school. I'm not good at math. I'm probably not going to go to a good college. I just always had this idea in my head that like I was dumb. And I think it's because I compared myself to so many other people that were just maybe like naturally smarter or better at studying. And I had such bad, like, honestly, like ADHD and like was just couldn't focus. And I just equated that to like, all right, like I'm just like a dumb person. And I think that Mr. Usinger was the first one to really like recognize in me that he was like, you are a smart person. And I remember he told me, he was like, and again, he was like a jokester. So he wasn't this like super like deep, serious person, but I feel like he kind of like, he saw me and he was like, you are going to be so successful. Like, you're going to go out there and you're going to do something amazing. And at the time I was like, what do you mean? Like I'm taking all the basic classes. I'm not doing anything crazy. I was like pretty naturally good at math, but like I didn't really have anything else. And he was like, you have no idea. Like you're going to be so successful. Like you just don't even know. And honestly, it sounds so cheesy, but like those words, like I carried with me for so many years. And like he was the first one I feel like saw me, like other than like my parents and my friends and people that loved me, but he was the first teacher that was ever like, oh, you're gonna go somewhere in life. I felt like I was so used to teachers that were like, oh, like Shannen, she's like a jokester, or she's funny, or she comes into class late every day, like like whatever, and would like send me to detention. And like he was like, no, like I see you. And I feel like I carried that with me, and like that really, really motivated me. Honestly, like through the rest of high school and even through college and early on in my career, I'll never forget, I graduated college and I got this job. And it was like a really good job. And in my head, I was like, wow, like one day when I become successful in my career, I want to go back to high school. I want to tell Mr. Usinger, like, you had such a big impact on my life. Like, you didn't even realize like that you did this for me. And I've been meaning to go back and see him for literally 2 years now. I remember when I got promoted, I was like, I'm going to go back and I want to say thank you to Mr. Usinger. And I just never got around to it.
Don't tell me he died.
Kept pushing it off and I kept pushing it off. And around a month ago, I got a text from my best friend saying Mr. Usinger unexpectedly passed away. Oh. I think he was like in his like maybe mid 50s or like maybe early 60s. Like he was still teaching. He wasn't that old. It was untimely. And like, not to make it selfish, obviously it was very, very sad for like his wife and for his loved ones. And it wasn't about me, but in that moment I was just like, he's never going to know. Like, he's never going to know what he did for me and like what a big impact. And he probably doesn't even know, or he probably didn't know. But I was like, oh, he sees hundreds of students, right? Like every year there's another graduating class. And he probably had no idea. Right. Maybe he knows. But I think that's the point. Like, if I had just not made excuses and I had just gone back and like told him and been like, you know what, I'm going to leave work early today and like go back and do this thing and let this person know that all of their work and like all those years of teaching, like I'm sure other people told him. So I'm hoping that like, obviously it's not all about me, but like, I wish I had done that and I didn't. And now it's too late. So I think it's important. Like, you're never too busy. There's never a wrong time to like tell people that you care, to tell people what they did for you. Like, it's so, so important.
I was like, where's the morbid in this story? And then you brung it. That's so sad. But I truly do believe that he knows.
Yeah.
Like, he's listening. He knows. I do believe that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that he passed. That's really sad.
Thank you. I feel like I'm sorry, guys. The doom and gloom this week is just like, I didn't mean it.
No, I mean,
they can't all be uplifting episodes.
They can't. And I think it's important to talk about. I think death is hard to talk about.
Yeah.
I think these topics are things that we should normalize talking about because, I mean, you never want to live life with regrets, but I think we all do to some degree. And yes. I think a lot of our regrets revolve around death and wishing that we did or didn't.
Yeah, I agree. So, moral of the story, if you're listening to this, text, the friend who you haven't talked to in years that had a huge impact on your life. Reach out to the teacher that believed in you. Text your parents, call your dad, call your mom, like whatever it is. It's important.